Hello and welcome to CT Vets Connect, the official podcast of the Connecticut Department of Veterans Affairs. I'm your host, Brian Scott Smith, and coming up in this edition, the annual Veterans Stand Down event is happening in late September. We find out the details and locations it will be happening at this year. Plus an update on veterans housing, and the agency's website gets a makeover, and news on some important new legislation for veterans that will take effect at the beginning of October. And we talk about loneliness and how it's reached epidemic levels here in the nation. Joining us as always is the Commissioner of the Department of Veterans Affairs, Commissioner Welch. Good to have you back as always.
Brian, great to see you again. Thank you for having us on.
And also we have with us as well John Carragher, who's the Manager of the Office of Advocacy and Assistance. John, good to have you back on as well.
Thanks, Brian. Great to be here.
We're going to kick off with the Commissioner. Lots to talk about as usual from both of you. Commissioner, Stand Down is coming up very soon. What is Stand Down?
For the past several decades, Connecticut Department of Veterans Affairs has been working really closely with several partners, including the federal VA, local partners that are out there, state partners, to provide critical services and information, primarily to make sure that we're connecting our 170,000 veterans and families in Connecticut with the services that they're entitled to receive.
So talk to us a little bit more about the intent of standing.
Sure. So the intent is to provide, again, some initial free services at 6 locations around the state. We want to really make sure that our veterans, starting at the local levels, understand what is available to them. We provide additional information about the programs and services that are out there to assist them as they transition, and those that have been out of the military for a while understand what's available to them. And we're really excited to have the Stand Down and to be able to host it again this year on Friday the 20th of September from 9 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon.
And I believe you've got quite a few locations as well. Just quickly talk us through the locations, because it is across the state. That's important, again, that people have access to this. They don't have to drive too far to get to it.
Sure. So 6 locations this year. We found that we needed to expand from 5 to 6. So the first location is right here in Rocky Hill on our 92-acre campus, which is located at 287 West Street. The second is in Bridgeport. At the University of Bridgeport, there's a large recreation center called the Wheeler Recreation Center at 400 University Avenue. Bristol at St. Gregory CCD Center at 1043 Stafford Ave. Out in Danbury at the War Memorial, 1 Memorial Drive. 5th location is Norwich at Easter Seals Veterans Rally Point, 24 Stott Avenue. And the final location this year, the added one, is down in Stamford at the University of Connecticut at 1 University Place.
And talk to us, if you would, about some of the services as well. Plenty of services, but a few key ones that I know that you want to mention to us.
Sure. So I want to also add, Brian, that this is available to active service members, National Guard reservists from all branches, and immediate family members. And it's remarkable. Last year, we probably had about 120 providers. This year, we have 150 plus that have graciously stepped up to provide a variety of earned benefits and services. Some include vaccinations, legal services, medical and dental screening, and some dental supplies, employment services, vehicle licensing, and a lot more.
Again, we'll just give that date out again. So that's September 20th, 2024, of course, and the time of the stand down at those various locations starting at 9 a.m. through to 2 p.m.
One other key thing is that there is statewide transportation is going to be provided by our partner, Connecticut Department of Transportation. There is also coffee and donuts at each one of the sites, and there will be free lunches available. Please visit our website.
And we should mention, actually, while we mention the website, it seems an appropriate time to say that, of course, it's been revamped as part of the state as they look at all of the agencies. Just give us a quick idea of what's happened to it.
Sure. And I want to compliment a partner agency, BITS, and another organization that came in to help us. And John, who joins us today, was an integral part of this update that happened. It's a very user-friendly website that focuses on our core missions, talks about our healthcare facility for 125 veterans. It's a skilled care facility, the residential program for 150 plus, along with the office that he manages, the Office of Advocacy and Assistance, and also our cemetery and memorial services. John, I'll ask you to comment on some of the features of the site.
Of course, sir. So one of the things that we found as we looked at the old website was we had built it over a number of years, and it kind of became too layered and too many things went too many different places. So what we were able to do is streamline it based on our core functions as an agency, with the thought process of if we have to click more than twice to find the information that you're looking for, then we're not doing it right. So we were able to flatten out the website a little bit and make it much easier for people to find the information that they needed quickly.
Everybody uses websites, and some generations use it more than others, but that accessibility thing and that ease of moving around, so that's good to know that the website has had that upgrade, and it'll be interesting to see what people think about it. I've had a look at it, and I have to say it just visually looks so much more appealing and was much more intuitive as well as soon as you hit that website homepage, and I think that is very important.
I just wanted to also add a reference to Stand Down. You'll see the whole transportation plan from Department of Transportation is on our website. You can also get information about the Stand Down on our Facebook at Connecticut Veterans Affairs.
Let's talk about housing, because that's another big issue, of course, for veterans. A lot of money came from ARPA funds, which is great. Give us the lowdown, if you would, on that, Commissioner.
Sure, and it was a surprise to all of us that around July last year we received a lot of ARPA funding, approximately $5 million, to take some of the housing that's been underutilized on the campus and in some cases kind of in deplorable conditions. So we announced last week that we would be doing significant modification, which will provide us 46 more beds and spaces, living spaces on the campus. Our intent is to provide, secure, safe, and clean environment. This will enhance the quality of life of some of our veterans that are in, some of their darkest days. It's really a team effort to pull this project together, related to different state officials and partnered organizations, construction services, our state fire marshal, the state historical preservation office, and many others. But real important with this project is it wouldn't be possible without support from the governor, lieutenant governor, and some of the representatives, Rojas, Representative Woods, and Scott. And the housing commissioner has done tremendous work in this area also, Commissioner Bruno. And there are many others out there that are unnamed that have a real passion for helping veterans.
Talk to us, if you would, about some of the phases of the project.
The timelines that we're looking at right now, we have an initial design that's under final review for the next couple weeks, and we really need to get this out to bid by the 27th of September, about 6-week bidding process, and then we hope to award the contract around the 20th of December. And if everything goes well, possibly late spring, we can start to really get this thing moving forward and get some occupancy within, I don't want to be extremely, I don't want to overstate, but hopefully within the next year we'll have some residents in those 46 spaces.
And just how important is it for you as the commissioner to, one, get this project, one of many, obviously, that you're dealing with, to get this going, but, knowing that you're providing these extra facilities, obviously, for veterans who need them?
The challenge to our staff right now is increase the census in our healthcare facility, our skilled care facility. Let's get it up to the max capacity of 125 so we can take care of as many veterans that are in need as possible. And the same on the housing side. We have a new housing director, or residential director. Her name is Renee Gore. We just brought her on within the last week or so. She has a really good vision. She has a lot of experience. We're talking about the gap we feel that is out there right now. And that gap is we have those that have a lot of mobility that can live in the residential side unassisted. And then we have those in the skilled care facility. But we have a gap with those that need some assistance. So possibly part of that 46 units we can use for that gap. Those that need some assisted living but not complete 24-hour skilled care. The project's going to require some abatement of hazardous material, so that's what's in the process of happening right now, is getting all those contracts ready and identifying those that can do that abatement. And then we have some concrete work and railings to make sure that we're ADA compliant and we have good accessibility. A lot of painting and floor replacements need to be done throughout. Some bathroom completion complete kitchen remodeling, door, window replacement, furniture replacement, site lighting, plumbing, electrical upgrades, and a lot of code compliance things have to be remediated to make sure that we meet the current codes that are out there. And then, of course, landscaping and a lot more.
It's just like owning a home. I mean, you're always doing something to it, but obviously when it comes to something like the VA and the fact that you're looking after people, like you said, changes with, lead paint and all sorts of things. And obviously it all takes time, but it's good to see, obviously, that the money is there, it's being spent. And the most important thing is that obviously these veterans are going to get the advantage of these nice new facilities.
And the big thing is, the family housing side of it, not just the individual service members or veterans that need housing, but families. So directly across the street, we have a facility you're familiar with. It's called Patriot Landing. We have 5 houses there. They are constantly filled, typically with a single parent and a couple children. We're going to try to open up 6 more of those facilities as part of this program on another part of the campus.
Well, we'll look forward to updates in future podcasts on that. And as always, Commissioner, it's great talking to you. Thank you for that. We're going to bring John Carragher back in, Manager of the Office of Advocacy and Assistance. John, you're going to talk to us. You've just mentioned about the website, which is great, but you're also going to talk to us today as well about some legislative updates. Going to kick off first with what is a very important thing that came through, a property tax exemption for veterans with permanent and total disability. Talk to us about that and why it is such a big deal.
So thanks, Brian. Great to talk about it. It will help a significant number of veterans. And this is not a success story from one session of our legislature, but a success story for many, many years of a lot of people working real hard to update the property tax exemptions for our veterans across the state. What this public act does is provides a 100% exemption on the dwelling of a veteran that is permanently and totally disabled. So you can tell that that's obviously going to make a really significant financial impact on the life of that veteran and his or her family going forward when that big chunk of property tax bill comes off their budget.
Like everything, these things get phased in. Can you tell us when that becomes active?
Sure. The original bill was passed, like I said, in this last session of the legislature. The effective date is October 1st of this year, and veterans should see that in their next year's property tax bills because, as you know, property taxes are paid in arrears, and it takes about a year for that to catch up. But veterans should be headed to there and talking with their assessors and their leadership within their town to provide the proper documentation as to their service-connected disability.
Yeah, that's a very important thing to mention. It's all very well saying you're a veteran, but you have to have those documents to actually take to the town or the city that you're living in to actually prove that as well. The other thing I think is important to mention, because often people go, well, is it retroactive? My understanding is it isn't retroactive. So sorry, no previous refunds for previous years, but it will become active as of this year. But as you say, the important thing is speak to your town officials, make sure they know and that you take them the appropriate documentation, because that's going to be absolutely important, isn't it?
Absolutely. And veterans that are permanently and totally disabled can get their verification letter through the federal VA's website, and it's a relatively easy process to do, and they should provide that to their municipal assessor. I always have to put a plug in for if you're a veteran and you don't have a copy of your DD-214, get a copy of your DD-214. Critically important because it's one of those things that when you need it right now, and it's not a right now kind of thing to get it.
I hear what you say. Yeah, some of these documents aren't always, quick to get hold of, are they? So good advice there. Another piece of legislation that came through, veterans license plates and designations for certain reservists. Talk to us about that and, again, the importance of that.
Sure. That's a 2-part public act, both for the Veterans Identification Indicator on motor vehicle operator licenses and non-driving identification cards. It's basically a flag on your license or identification card, as well as the basic veteran motor vehicle plate for vehicle registrations in Connecticut. The legislature has expanded eligibility for those 2 things to honorably discharge Reserve and National Guard members, and that is, again, also effective on October 1st.
Again, for that particular piece of legislation, they need to be talking to the DMV about that?
So we have a process, and we work very closely with DMV. We we process applications to verify the veteran status. As it relates to the flag on the license, we receive them here. We have a form and they send it in with the appropriate documentation and we process it through motor vehicle. And then the next time that either a motor vehicle operator's permit or a non-driving identification card is produced by DMV, that indicator will be on the license. License plates for vehicle registrations, that is a form, that is a motor vehicle form. It is handled completely by them. Other than I work very closely and our office works very closely with motor vehicle to make sure that we validate the person is indeed eligible for both the basic veteran plate and the campaign specific plates.
Okay, so anybody out there, if they're unsure, can get in contact with your office as usual and just, you'll be able to give them the details about what it is they need to do, where they need to go, etc.
Absolutely. And again, in keeping with, you only have to click twice on our website. If you go to our website at ct.gov/DVA and advocacy and assistance, and you will see a link there for both those items, and the public can click on that and find exactly what they need to do.
Sounds great. Another plug, as I say, for the new website, which people should go and have a look at, and I think they'll find that very helpful and accessible. To you both, as always, thank you ever so much for the information. We'll talk to you, certainly the Commissioner again, John. Always pleasure to see you as well. Thank you for those important legislative updates as well. Thanks for being on this podcast.
Brian, thank you very much.
Thanks, Brian.
We all crave a little bit of alone time now and again, but when does being alone turn into being lonely? Loneliness in America has become a big health issue for all ages and parts of our society, but it doesn't have to be that way, as I found out recently when talking to a Connecticut-based nonprofit. Joining us on the podcast is Deb Bibbins, founder and CEO of For All Ages, and her co-founder, Gary Sikorsky. To you both, thanks for joining us on the podcast.
Happy to be here, Brian. Thanks so much for having us both on.
Equally thrilled. Thank you.
So, Deb, I'm going to kick off with you, if I may. Just give us that elevator pitch. What is For All Ages about?
For All Ages is a Connecticut nonprofit that is dedicated to connecting the generations and inspiring action to end loneliness, reduce ageism, and improve mental, physical, and social health. And what that translates to is that we design and facilitate programs that bring the generations together throughout the state of Connecticut, sometimes in person, sometimes virtually. And we're also in the process of hosting social health education programs throughout the state of Connecticut.
So just talk to us as well, if you would, Deb, about, how big an issue is loneliness? Because we do see it being reported more and more these days in the media.
Loneliness is something that's been around for a long time, and really since the pandemic has been talked about much more often, which Gary and I are thrilled about because that really is the baseline of our mission. More than 60% of us are feeling lonely on a pretty regular basis. That number is for people of all ages, interestingly. So from young adults all the way through middle adults and then into older adults. Certainly veterans are feeling loneliness at the same rate. And that rate is really, the 60% of us. So it's at an epidemic level. And loneliness is a root cause of so many things that when you peel it away and you get back to the basics, loneliness is a root cause of anxiety. It's a root cause of depression. It's the root cause of substance abuse, suicidal ideation. And then when we're thinking about the older adult population, and really that's for purposes of a lot of the research that's done, it's age 50 or 55 plus, loneliness increases the risk of dementia by 50%, increases the risk of having a stroke by 56%, and increases the risk of heart disease by 30%. So everything that we do, we're thinking about, okay, how can we reduce the risks of all of the things that I just mentioned for people of all ages? And how can we do that in a fun and engaging and really inviting way?
I was going to say that's the key, isn't it? I will just say that those statistics are quite shocking to listen to and also very disturbing. So it's great that there's organizations like For All Ages out there that are helping to look at that, deal with it, and create programs around it. Veterans, of course, are a part of our society, a big part of our society, but also they are not immune to, of course, loneliness as well. Gary, talk to us, if you would, about some of the programs, because you've got multiple programs, but but just talk to us about some of these things and how you're engaging with veterans, because sometimes they can be a bit standoffish, can't they?
I think you're kind of right. Unfortunately, in a lot of ways, veterans are kind of isolated, right? And our programs are geared for not only people that are isolated, but for people of all ages, hence the name of our organization. But we're thrilled to be able to engage with veterans here in Connecticut on a variety of different ways and platforms, both virtually all the way through in-person interactions. And I'll start a little bit with the virtual program. It's called the T at 3 Community. And what that is we actually pair an older adult with a college-age student for a 12-week program based on common interests. And it's simply a once-a-week phone call, which really connects somebody in a virtual way. Ideally, you'd like to be in person with someone, but this is an example of just a connection on a routine, repetitive basis can make a real big difference. So that's one example of a virtual program. We also have had incredible success with veterans, both in person with a program we called the Buddies and Bobbers Fishing Derby. And that's a real fun thing. That happens annually every year in May, where we take an older adult and pair them with a younger student, a younger kid, and they learn how to fish for the day. And just this past May, when we had several veterans from the Connecticut Veterans Facility in Rocky Hill, they had a wonderful time actually teaching kids, getting out in the community, and just doing something different. It was really a thrill and just so advantageous for all the veterans.
Talk to us a little bit more about some of the reactions that you get from, the people that you serve. I mean, tell us about, some of the feedback you're getting from veterans, because like I said, they can be a little bit standoffish, not because they're antisocial, but, there's certain things that have gone on in their lives, and sometimes they feel a little bit withdrawn. It takes a little bit of extra time to get them to reconnect. So when they do, give us a sense of how they feel when they actually get back out there.
I would sum it up with the word connectedness. I can tell you firsthand when I spoke to several of the veterans myself that day, what joy on their faces when they could actually connect, especially with a younger person, and bring back some memories of their own. One particular veteran I spoke to was just thrilled. He remembered when he was learning how to fish actually in the southern part of our country way back in the day. And I saw just complete joy because it brought back a memory that he probably hadn't had in many years. And who doesn't light up when you're trying to talk to a young kid or a person looks up at you and sees you as that kind of person or figure that they can look up to and respect. We see this type of response all the time, Brian. It's actually quite magical, and it's so simple in a way, right? You put two people together of a different generation, whether it be a mentoring role from an older adult to a younger person, or that looking up and saying, geez, I never knew that someone would have an experience like that, or I never knew I could learn from someone like that. So we see that type of response all the time, and quite honestly, that's what keeps Deb and I's motor keeps chugging every day.
I was going to say to both of you, what does get you up every day and keep doing this? Because this is some tough stuff, and people go through tough times, and like we said, to have an organization out there that's actually actively assisting in this regard is obviously so desperately important. So like we said, we're very grateful for all ages. But as I say, what keeps you going, both of you?
I would say that one of the things that's so important to both Gary and I is giving people a sense of purpose. So whether we are connecting an older adult veteran with a youth at our fishing derby, or whether we're connecting two people via our intergenerational friendship T at 3 community, it's really giving, especially for the older adults, giving them a sense of purpose, right? And inviting them into a comfortable space where they can be their authentic selves and where they can share a little bit about their life, and where people have an interest in hearing someone's life story. To me, that really shines a light on the wisdom and the vibrancy of older adults. It enables youth to see that, to see older adults in a positive light, and to really think about their aging in a positive light.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. Oftentimes, we're put in these silos. You hit a certain age, for example, the 55 plus living communities. In a lot of ways, that's a really interesting way, and it can be a very positive experience for someone. But in another way, it may not be, right? Because you're kind of saying, well, you're at a certain age now, so you should belong over here. And really, that's the last thing you want to do, right? Everything we try to do, and we're very successful at this, is we create things intergenerationally. because we know the problem of loneliness is not just for people that are 55 or 70 plus, but actually that 18 to 22-year-old, or maybe that person who just finished their military service. We've heard from Commissioner Welch, for example, that age group in that kind of mid-20s, late 20s can be an incredibly difficult time. So what better way to connect people and to see that kind of purpose that Deb spoke of, to really come out and feel like you really are connected and you belong.
It's baseline. I really think that's what it gets back to. When we talk about loneliness is that feeling that we don't have the amount of positive social connection in our lives that we wish we had. And when we are feeling connected and feeling that sense of belonging, that's where we can really say, okay, I feel like I am part of something. I'm part of a community. I feel like people are listening to me, and I feel like I really just belong. And that was one of the things that we thought about as we were thinking about how to convene a broader state initiative. And a year ago, following our U.S. Surgeon General's declaration of loneliness as a public health crisis, we did that. It's known as the Connecticut Collaborative to End Loneliness. It has a separate website from For All Ages website. That happens to be endlonelinessct.org. We expect this to be a decade-long initiative because the problem of loneliness has been building and building over multiple decades. So we know we can't solve it immediately and overnight, but we're bringing together people and organizations from throughout the state of Connecticut who touch the topic of loneliness in one way. And the idea is if we can bring everyone together, then we can learn from each other and we can really make a positive impact. One of the things that we started in the spring of 2024 that we will be continuing this fall and into 2025 is something that we're calling the Connecting Connecticut Conversation Series, where we go out into a community and we're trying to touch every county in the state of Connecticut. And we bring experts and people with lived experience. So whether it be a veteran or whether it be a new mom or whether it be an older adult, people that are willing to share their experience dealing with loneliness and dealing with social disconnectedness and hopefully overcoming that. And we engage people to think about why there shouldn't be a stigma associated with loneliness, why it is that we should think about loneliness the same way we think about hunger. It's really, when you're hungry, it simply means you need food. And when you're lonely, it simply means you need social connection. It doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you. And the second half of every one of these conversations is really when we turn to the audience and engage the audience in thinking about how can they individually improve their social connectivity and think about how they can help their family, their friends, and ultimately their community members.
So at the end of the day, as we say, lots of things there that are being done by your organization. If people want to get involved, want to volunteer, how do they do that?
They could reach out to us via the fораllages.org website, and that is all letters, FORALLAGES.org. You can send us a message. I actually receive all of those messages that are sent via the website. And the same goes for the endlonelinessct.org website. The one thing I would say is that our Tea at 3 community that Gary spoke of runs every spring and every fall. It's a 12-week program. We have the opportunity right now to sign up for the fall 2024 session. And that sign-up window ends on September 11th, but then we'll be back in the spring and we'll be out there talking to folks about the opportunity and signing people up for the spring session.
I'll just reiterate what Deb said. If you need to reach out to us and you're interested in our programs, either as a participant or volunteer, we're always in need of volunteers because we're a nonprofit organization. You can do so on the website, and Deb and myself personally go through all those and we reach out if you have any questions.
Well, Deb Bibbins, founder and CEO, and Gary Sikorski, co-founder of For All Ages. It's been great talking to you. Thanks for giving us a quick bit of insight into what you and your team and your agency does. And we look forward to future conversations with you. But thanks in the meantime for being on the podcast.
Brian, thanks so much for having us on.
And For All Ages recently met with the Commissioner and team at the Department of Veterans Affairs and delivered cards to the campus as part of their Joyful Notes project, and had veterans participate in their Learn to Fish event earlier this year, and to discuss their Tea at 3 program that you heard about in their interview with me just now. Plus, the Department of Veterans Affairs licensed professional counsellor Ebony Langston has become the newest member of For All Ages Board of Directors. That's all from this episode of CT Vets Connect. If you need help or guidance about services and resources that might be available to you, then please contact the Connecticut Department of Veterans Affairs on their main number 860-616-3600 or via their website at ct.gov/DVA or through Facebook at CT Veterans Affairs. And don't forget to tell us what you think about the podcast and stories you'd like to hear on future editions of CT Vets Connect. I'm Brian Scott Smith. Thanks for listening.